Hello everyone and welcome to the Gems Uncut podcast. My name's Abigail.
My name's Jake Thompson and it's really nice to join you. Abigail, thank you very much for putting this together.
Thank you. We're really excited about this. So tell us a little bit about the podcast premise, Jake, and why you wanted to start this project.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been in the gemstone and jewellery trade as a professional gem investor for 16 years, travelling to the mines and to the communities who mine the gemstones, talking to a lot of people doing that. And whilst I often come home with suitcases full of gemstones, I've also come home with lots and lots of stories. And I try and share those stories as much as I can in various lines of work that I do. But particularly if it's on mainstream television, for example, where I do a lot of talking, there are rules on what I can and I can't say. So some of the best stories never get told simply because they're probably a little too rough. They might not be PC enough. And yeah, I'll tell them around the office. And everyone goes, oh my gosh, we should definitely have a way of people who are passionate about gemstones, people who are passionate about jewellery, finding out about these stories, mostly from the miners and the communities and the gem industry behind kind of, you know, you think about the jewellery industry and it's polished, it's glamorous, you know, you think the Vicenza show and liquid gold everywhere, beautiful Italian models swanning around in most expensive gemstones. But actually, there's a really much more, I find that a bit bland, there's a much more interesting side of it, which is kind of the real, the nitty gritty, the at times dangerous, and everyone's trying to put a real polish on the jewellery industry. I quite like the rough, raw, real part of it. So yeah, hopefully this is the platform where I'm allowed to tell some of my more off-cuff stories, and also have a bit of a discussion around parts of the industry that don't really get talked about. You know, lots of people talk about beneficiation and about helping the people who mine the gemstones get the value of that. But there's also some real horror stories that started with good intentions that never came to be. Yeah, so calling out, I suppose, a platform to call out a few of those misapprehensions, if you will, or misunderstandings around the jewellery industry as well.
So this is the uncut space, the unfiltered space.
Yeah,
those
no
stories,
filter,
Jake, isn't it?
no filter. And if I offend you, I apologise, but we've got to be real in this space.
We're going to be real.
This is the unpolished space. This is the raw, the rough. You know, if what you see on the TV programmes or other types of programming are the polished, beautiful diamond, we're going to give it you as dirty as it came out of the ground.
Absolutely. Thank you for that introduction, Jake. So we have a little segment to start us off with the podcast, which we're going to talk about jewellery within media. In Geneva, they had an auction where the largest internally flawless blue diamond was sold this week. 10.3 carats, I think it is, but I will fact check myself on that. Can you tell us a little bit about why that's so important and groundbreaking?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing to understand is these kind of record auctions. Every time there is an auction, a big auction house wants one of them, right? They're the headline that grabs your attention, and then all the rest of the lots kind of hopefully benefit from your attention being on there. In this case, it was this blue diamond, like you say, natural blue diamond, so not irradiated, and it will be blue because of the presence of boron. So diamonds are pure carbon. I mean, that's what that's the basic building block behind a diamond, is that it's got to be pure carbon atoms. But even within that, pure carbon diamonds are actually exceedingly rare. They exist, but they're exceedingly rare. In reality, because nature never makes anything perfect and uniform, there are often trace amounts of elements that give diamonds their colour. You know, if it's a yellow diamond, it might be nitrogen. In the case of this blue one, it was boron. But that happens so rarely that they don't tend to crystallise into big shapes. So a little over 10 carats, it's what we in the industry call a special, and a blue special, yeah, I mean, it's a world record, right? But the thing I find most interesting about this is actually the diamond industry at the moment is really trying to go into this direction of record auction, which is kind of following in the footsteps of the coloured stone market. So previously, the coloured stone market kind of looked at diamonds and went, we want a bit of that, so tried to do what diamonds have done in terms of aggregating mines under one or two corporations, in this case Gemfields and Fura, in the case of diamonds, De Beers, obviously in the early 20th century. But now what's happening, the coloured gemstone world's going, actually we don't want the big record auctions. So I've spoken to a lot of gem dealers who have got world record gemstones in their pocket. Well, not in their pocket, literally, in their vaults. And they don't want them to go on the news. They want to keep them secret because they don't want to set a ceiling price for the jewelry that goes and gets made of them. Now, at first, I didn't quite understand this. I thought, no, you want record, right? It's like free advertising. But they explained to me, okay, let's take the Estrella de Fura, which was one of the largest, if not the largest, fine ruby mined in Mozambique, famously went to an auction, multiple millions of pounds, and broke records. But now that's never made it into jewellery. Because when you make that into jewellery, well, everyone knows the cost of the gold, everyone knows the cost of the diamonds, the cost of the workmanship. The only unknown is the cost of the stone. Except we do know it because it was published globally in all the mainstream media. So now there's a growing movement to say, actually, certainly in the coloured stone industry, well, actually, we don't want to publish it anymore. So there's a gem house that's just, an auction house rather, just been founded by Dev Shetty, who was the millionaire owner of Fura Gems, which had Colombian Emerald, some Zambian Emerald interest, Mozambique rubies, sapphires. So he's just left Fura and he's just set up a jewellery house, I keep saying jewellery house, an auction house rather, in Dubai. And the whole premise is no phones, no photos, no press. So everything's done in secret. And I think that's really interesting because that's obviously how it all used to be done. And then there was this move to try and publicise everything and do that. And then now the coloured stone world's gone, right, okay, we've got what we wanted out of this. Now we're going back to the old ways of lots of secrets.
It almost goes the old way back, doesn't it?
It's gone full circle. So yeah. I'm really interested to see, what does the diamond market do? Does it follow suit, or actually under assault from falling carat prices because of the factory-made fakes that are taking over the industry? Does it keep supporting the auctions? Because everyone thinks the auctions support the gemstones. It could be the other way around. It could be that these record gemstones support the auctions. Do they keep supporting the auctions to try and get more and more press around natural diamonds? So it's a really interesting time.
Yeah, absolutely. So our topic for today, we're talking all about the emerald industry today.
Yes.
So should we get cracking with the story?
Yeah,
tell us a little bit
absolutely.
about it.
And when I talk about the emerald industry, you talk about where do you find emeralds from. You find emeralds from a few places on the planet, not all places. You're not going to find them in your back garden, unfortunately.
Oh, unless
you happen to live in Brazil, in which case there is probably a chance you could find them in your back garden. But the main places you find emerald are Brazil, Colombia. I mean, Colombia's been in the top spot for centuries. And they're really it for the South American deposits. In Africa, there's been South Africa deposit. There was a Zimbabwe deposit. But the big one is the Zambian deposit I talked about a moment ago. I mean, that's the huge quantity of emeralds are coming from Zambia. There is some that's been found in Russia, in the Ural Mountains. And there's a little bit of production happening, or was happening rather, in Afghanistan, in a valley called the Panjshir Valley. Beautiful product, but now no one's buying them because of geopolitical reasons.
Yeah, we had a conversation about this the other day, didn't we?
We did, yeah.
Yeah, because we had a comment on our social media about the Panjshir emeralds, and you said they were beautiful, but the market has moved away from it because of the geopolitical issues.
So I mean, this is why we're allowed to talk, right? This is the place where we tell it as it really is. So what happens there is you have, in the 1980s, the Taliban were active in Afghanistan, and in the 90s, the whole thing. They might have different names, but it's essentially the same people and same ideologies, and they are active in Afghanistan, but not everyone in Afghanistan wants that. So, and particularly in the Panjshir Valley, actually, that was the centre of resistance against the Taliban. And there's a really famous resistance fighter. I forget his real name, but he's known as the Lion of Panjshir because he organised all this resistance from this beautiful valley. And the valley, having grown up with the news cycle in the noughties, I have a picture of Afghanistan in my mind. But the Panjshir Valley is completely different. It looks like this Eden-esque landscape. It's lush, it's fertile, deep valley walls and villages dotted along the valley. And it's in those mountains that form the valley. That's where you find, and they are, to my experience, the best emeralds on the planet. I know Colombia has produced extraordinary material. But I've never seen the top 10 Colombian emeralds. I have seen some of the top 10.
Why are they so amazing?
It's a combination of depth of color, depth of the clarity, the crystal formation, and that's to do with the chemistry. That you've got huge amounts of chromium being able to be part of their makeup, because it seems really strange to think now you've got Panjshir Valley, very mountainous, you've got Colombia, very mountainous in the Andes, but at one point the land where those emeralds formed was under a seabed. So that creates you lots of. You need chromium and beryllium to make top gem emeralds. They both form, one at the top of mountains, the other at seabeds. So you need to somehow try and get them both together in order to get best emeralds, which is why emeralds are really rare when they get really good. So Panjshir, that happens. Then obviously the there was the Republic of Afghanistan after the toppling of the Taliban. And as part of the international world trying to support development in Afghanistan, lots of money went into developing these Panjshir emerald mines. We had blockchain tracking them all the way through. Lots of technology, lots of really good investments from various development organizations. And a few of these Panjshir stones trickled onto the market, and everyone was like, wow, this is amazing. And then, unfortunately, geopolitical events took over. Specifically speaking, the 2021 Taliban resurgence, which retook over Afghanistan. And really, that then takes out Panjshir off the menu. So you come back to a situation where you've got Panjshir and you've got Colombia and you've got Zambia.
Yeah.
Kind of nestled in amongst all of this. They're the two options on your menu, and Colombia is widely regarded, because it has been for 500 years, as the better option on the menu. And what ends up happening is there's lots of excitement about a new discovery in Ethiopia. And the excitement starts small. It starts really small because it's cooperative mining. So rather than one big business owning the whole mining concession, it's small artisanal miners, and mining's risky. You can go months without finding it. You can go years without finding anything. And so what they do is they tend to form cooperatives where you've got 5 or 6 of you, or however many it is. And that way, if you find something but I don't find something for a few months, you sell yours, I get some of the money, and I can keep on eating and then go and live in hope of finding the next emerald. So these cooperatives start up. And what was really interesting about the Ethiopian case is they did lots of research, and they realized before they'd cut them, so you've got rough emeralds, and they don't look beautiful and sparkly like the emeralds that we see in our jewelry, but they do look beautiful. You can still look them up, and they've got a beauty all of their own before they're cut. And they look at them and go, look, this is really good emerald. I mean, we've found something special here in Ethiopia, a really remote part called Shakiso. And so they're mining in Shakiso, they find these emeralds, and the first kind of problem that they encounter is they go, okay, well, we want to sell these emeralds, and we know that in Jaipur, India, that's where 90% of the world's emeralds cut. So they take them over to Jaipur in India, and they're looking at these emeralds, they go, these are the best emeralds in the world. And the Indian buyers, being really sharp and shrewd businessmen, go, they're okay. I'll give you a little bit for them, but not much. And straight away, you've got the cooperative thinking they found their millions. And you've got the Indian gem cutting houses negotiating, which they've got to do, right?
They're doing it tactically.
They're doing the right thing for their business. You've got the Ethiopians doing the right thing for their business and community. And the Ethiopians leave that and go, my gosh, we're just going to get beaten up every single time on price here. You know, they know we're the new guys to the party. They know we've not got hundreds and hundreds of years of expertise in this. These guys are they're gonna beat us up all of the time on price, and we don't want that. We want to have more value come to the village than we're currently getting, and the only way to do that is to work the rough, is to process the rough, to start cutting it. And we're familiar with this as a concept. We just don't know it yet. So if you had aluminium, raw aluminium has a value, right? If you work that raw aluminium into a can that can hold a Coke, it's now got another value, right? It's more than the rough. It's more than the raw ore. The value of the aluminium's gone up. But if I can turn that aluminium raw and I can turn it into an iPhone case, suddenly my aluminium's worth a heck of a lot more than it was in its raw state. So the idea of working or processing that raw material, the more work you can do with it, the better. So in the emerald world, what does that mean? Well, you could cut the emeralds, or you could cut the emeralds and market the emeralds. And the closer you can get to the final customer, I suppose it's kind of doing what we do, but the opposite way, vertically integrate from the mine forward. And the more you can do that, the more value you get home, and your community gets to benefit from that. So, and we call that in the industry beneficiation. Like and that's a good thing, right? It can only be a good thing that people get to enjoy more of the money and the value of their natural treasures than if they just sold it as rough.
Yeah, because I suppose there's this debate within the industry that Westerners will come to a kind of artisanal place and kind of benefit from the gemstones found there and make the majority of the money, because I guess the Ethiopian miners don't have the ability to be able to barter in the industry.
Well, there's that. There's no skill in cutting in Ethiopia. There's no native and kind of ready to work at scale gemstone cutting industry. Emeralds are really hard to cut. But you're absolutely right, there is a perception, and it's perception because for 100 years that's what's happened, right? It's not an unfair perception. For 100 years you had the likes of De Beers, and I'm not talking about the De Beers company today, because actually I've got some friends there, they're lovely people and they're a very different mission. But while the clock back 50 years ago, or 100 years ago, you had Cecil Rhodes legally looting Africa of its diamond wealth, and it wasn't the farmers whose fields it wasn't the miners who were benefiting. It was suits in London.
Yeah.
So the perception's not wrong. I agree with the perception as it was then. But if you've got no cutting industry, you've got no marketing, and you say, well, we're not gonna sell the rough, but you've got no way of cutting it. Well, no one's making any money then. So, and that's happened before. It's happened in particularly in Tanzanite. One of the reasons Tanzanite yo-yos up and down in value, another gemstone, a blue gemstone, is because there's no consistent policy. Sometimes they want the foreign expertise and investment to come in and mine the gemstones, and then when they think we're not getting enough revenues here, the government will go, right, kick you all out then. But they've got no native expertise to come in and fill that gap because they've not used that money to go. So that's beneficiation gone wrong. Beneficiation gone right is De Beers. Let's point to De Beers and Botswana. Botswana leads most of Africa in every development index going, education, healthcare, etc. And it's all built on. It's a landlocked country. It's not hugely got lots of resources, but what it has got is huge diamond deposits. And the diamond deposits, the wealth has been kept in Botswana to a large degree, and the country has flourished as a result. So beneficiation done right can be a great thing. Beneficiation done wrong, which just slows the whole project down, or it can even kill it off entirely.
Right.
So the Ethiopian, the cooperative was really good at saying, okay, well, we want the added value that working, processing material, cutting it, marketing it can create, but we haven't got the skills. So they didn't try and do it all themselves, which was a genius mark. So they did their research, and they approached a really famous person in the industry, a guy called Jeffrey Bergman. And they said, okay, Jeffrey, you've got the cutting skill, or within this team, like you've got the cutting skill, you've got the marketing, you've got the network. We've got these world-class emeralds. Sorry, that's just taken one of our beautiful pieces of jewelry there. Don't worry, it's all precious metal, so it's absolutely fine. You've got the world-class network. We've got the world-class gemstones. Let's enter a partnership and share the value that we create together. And Jeffrey, we're the one doing the mining, so we're going to take 75% of the profit. You're going to take 25%, and that's our agreement. And Jeffrey did it. So Jeffrey went ahead with it, and Jeffrey worked really hard. I mean, he literally went to Colombia, which, bear in mind, it's got 500 years of people saying best emeralds in the world come from Colombia. He went to Colombia to an emerald fair in Colombia and told them all, essentially, no, there's a new kid on the block, it's Ethiopia, and it's going to knock you guys off your perch. I mean, how brave. That's huge. So he goes and does that. He has numerous articles written about it, GIA, Gemological Institute of America, other laboratories. Everyone's eyes are really zoning in on this new Shekiso material out of Ethiopia. And of course, as all this marketing is happening, the demand is growing, right? You've got designer jewelers going, hang on a second, I want a piece of that Ethiopian action. You've got gem dealers saying, I want a piece of that Ethiopian. You start to end up in a situation where you have some of the biggest named jewelry houses on the planet. You know, I'm talking Fifth Avenue, flagship store, beautiful boxes and packaging, celebrity endorsements, those guys. You know, they're the creme de la creme of the jewelry industry. And you start to have those guys going, Jeffrey, I've heard about these emeralds. I want in on some.
Is that because of his influence, or is that because of just how amazing the emeralds were?
So the emeralds were always amazing. But I do think without his hard work, no one would have recognised it.
Right.
And that really talks to something that happens in the industry, which is that gem dealers are obsessed with place. We are fixated on where things are from. So yeah, you found just as good emeralds coming out of Zambia. The very best of Zambian stands toe to toe with the very best of Colombian. You've got a situation where there are multiple more top gem quality carats produced in Zambia, because it's a bigger operation. Multiple more carats of top gem produced in Zambia than are produced in Colombia. And yet still people talk about Colombian emerald as being the best in the world. Yeah. We talk about Siberian amethyst, but we being the best amethyst in the world. We know that no amethyst came out of Siberia ever lived up to the mythical status of Siberian that we hold today. So we're just obsessed with place as gem dealers. And I do think it took Jeffrey's efforts to try and shake the gem world out of its kind of, I don't know, sleepy conservatism that said, Colombia, if it's not got the Colombia stamp, it's selling at a discount. And he did. He shook the whole world. And so eventually the world went, right, okay, fine, brilliant. We're now starting to pay attention to this Ethiopian material.
And just to put it into perspective, how often is it that you'll find a new deposit of gemstones like this? Is this a rare occurrence? Does it happen daily?
That's a great question. So recently, it's felt like it's happening a lot. If you look through 2010s, you've had discoveries of sapphires, in Australia, in Nigeria, and you've had discoveries. The ruby, Mozambique ruby came online. Zambian emerald went even bigger. So we are living through this kind of golden time of discovery. But it makes sense, and the reason it makes sense is because there's so much more money going into investment in exploring for resources. I think that we've probably reached the top of the curve, and we're now on this kind of downward trajectory of both overall gemstone output, but particularly of rate of discovery. There's so few wild frontiers yet to be explored in the gem world. In the 70s and 80s, it was East Africa. Before that, it was the Far East. Then they kind of went again at East Africa in the noughties. South America. Each decade kind of has its own area of exploration.